Hello and welcome to another video at Python NSE. And as you notice, yes, I do have a face now. I have a PNG tuber. But let's just get into the video. With journaling, there's many debates on whether digital journaling or analog journaling is better. There's a lot of reasons as to why people defend analog journaling in particular, which is the type of journaling that I use. Why do people like analog? Well, they might like the feel of the paper, how they can see their authentic handwriting, the custom stationery, and the fact that a notebook is much harder to lose than a file. However, there's one reason people often forget to mention: privacy. So, how is analog more private, you might ask, considering that, well, your family can just pick up your journal and open it and read it? Well, big companies like to spy on people a lot. They often look for your files with telemetry and stuff, and they collect your data by selling it to ads, as well as training it to AI. Especially if the application you're using to digital journal is closed source, you'd have no way of knowing what the company is doing with your data if it's not being encrypted in any way, shape, or form. Now, you might be wondering, then why is it worse that a company can see your journal entries as opposed to your family? Well, your journal has your most private and intimate thoughts in them. It's a place where you're meant to be able to freely express yourself without worrying that another person might look at those thoughts. Generally, a journal is meant for you to be vulnerable with. There's a lot of mental health data in journal entries. You'll share your happiest moments and your saddest moments and your deepest secrets. Secrets you might not want anyone to know about, except yourself. Companies can easily use this information if they get their hands on it to exploit you. Let me give you a personal example to show how companies knowing about your personal mental health data can make it easier for them to exploit you. So back in 2023, I was struggling a lot with attachment issues, and I had to cut off a friend that I was getting attached to. And obviously it made me really upset because, well, I just lost a friend that meant a lot to me. And obviously I was venting about it a lot, being really sad about it, talking about it to people on Discord. Well, since I used to use TikTok back then, my For You page started getting filled with a bunch of people that struggled with similar problems. Now, you might think this is a good thing because, well, I'm able to relate to these people, right? Wrong. Because a lot of the thoughts being expressed were these people basically having a really bad mindset about things, blaming others for their own flaws, basically. And that ended up putting me in this echo chamber of negative thoughts. I was already having my own negative, vengeful thoughts because of attachment issues, and TikTok's echo chamber made it so much worse. My own thoughts combined with the echo chamber ended up making me act really badly on those thoughts, something I deeply regret. So you can see that companies knowing about your private mental health data can make them take advantage of you and even make you a worse person by putting you in echo chambers where you'll end up thinking that you're right even though you might be wrong. And of course, let's not forget about AI. Many companies have gotten blamed over using personal data of users to train AI. For example, there was Google with their whole AI thing with Google Docs. And it's still not clear if Google Docs were actually used to spy on users or grab their info and train it to AI. But either way, if you journal on these apps, there's a chance that these companies might be able to use your personal information to train it to AI. Now, there are AIs that use people's faces to create fake pictures where they are doing something that they're not actually doing, that they never did. What's stopping those AI companies from using your private information and leaking it or making false stuff with it? By having your journal entries on a digital platform, especially if it's closed source, you end up risking a lot of these things. And if that didn't convince you enough, well, and one more thing is that these companies, no matter how secure they might be, there will always be some vulnerabilities and hackers can take advantage of it. You wouldn't want your journal entries falling into the hands of the wrong person, right? Not your most private thoughts, most vulnerable thoughts being in the hands of a malicious hacker that might post it on the dark web for everyone to see or blackmail you with them. This stuff does happen to people, and even if companies are super secure, it's not always the case that there won't be a vulnerability found by a hacker that can be taken advantage of. It's so easy for digital files to fall into the wrong hands that you really have to think about it. Is it really worth it to have your most personal thoughts be in a format that is so accessible everywhere and that can be easily taken by the wrong hands and used against you? Alright, now that I've talked about all the privacy disadvantages of digital journaling, I'd like to compare analog and digital with the advantages and disadvantages when it comes to privacy and security. So for analog, something really good is that only the people who have access to the journal itself will have access to it, which means that no one can log in from like another country and read your journal entries. They have to be in your room or wherever you put your journal, open it and read it, which means that the amount of people that can access it is really limited. And of course, it doesn't sell your data. It won't spy on you. It has no algorithm. It's not going to feed your information to AI. So if privacy is really what you're concerned about, analog is the way to go. And this is not really privacy related, but I'd say like security and longevity. You can't accidentally delete it, or if the app randomly shuts down, you won't suddenly lose access to your journal. It's a notebook, and you'll always have access to it as long as you don't throw it out or your house doesn't get on fire. But you'd probably lose most files anyways if your house were to go on fire. So yeah. However, if family is what you're concerned about, then yeah, family will be able to access it if you don't have a lock on your journal. They can easily open it and read your entries. So if you're more concerned about password protecting it from nosy family members than from companies, it might be a better option to go digital. But keep in mind, you will also lose all the other benefits of analog. So for digital, of course, companies are going to spy on you if the app you're using to journal is not encrypting anything. And if it's not open source, you won't know what it's actually taking from you and what it's doing with your information. There's a risk that the company will sell or leak your data, or that a hacker will do it, because these apps, these databases, they can be hacked and compromised. And even if you use free and open source software, your operating system can also track you. So for example, I use Windows, and Windows has a built-in keylogger. It's called something like inking and typing recognition, something like that. I disabled it, but since it's a proprietary software, I'm never 100% sure if it's actually disabled. I'm not sure about macOS though. I think Apple's a bit more careful when it comes to privacy, but again, proprietary software, you don't really know what's going on. Now that I've compared analog and journaling, I'd like to talk about even more reasons analog is, in my opinion, better than digital. Of course, it's a longevity aspect, because people know how to preserve paper better than preserve a digital file. Files can get corrupted, lost, accidentally deleted. Hard drives can break. So it's never guaranteed that you'll still have a file left unless you're backing it up in a bunch of different locations. But how much will you actually back up? That's the question. Because paper cannot be corrupted. Yes, it might be able to disintegrate over time, but it's not going to randomly get corrupted so easily. Because people have been preserving paper for a very long time, they'll know how to do it, but digital files have only existed for so long. So people don't know how to preserve files as much as they know how to preserve paper. Next is, of course, the unique vibe that comes with the notebooks. Since as time goes on, people's tastes in notebooks and stationery will be different. So a notebook from your childhood can look completely different from a notebook from your adulthood or teenagehood. And it just has so much more personality than just a PDF or a docx file or any other file. You might be able to change the cover of those, but there's no texture and there's not much you can do. You can't customize the shape of the notebook, the size of the notebook. It's all a file on a screen. And lastly, different paper has different feelings. There's different types of paper, from thick paper to thin paper, and it's really fun just experimenting with different paper types. Each one has a different feeling, and it's really fun to just try out these papers and see which one is the best one for you. And of course, just the texture and the feeling of flipping through actual pages rather than just scrolling through a PDF or whatever file type your digital journal might be. So, in conclusion, analog is actually more private than digital because there's no risk that a hacker or a company will be able to track your journal entries and use them for malicious purposes. However, there are times where digital journaling can win over analog journaling, despite how much I've defended analog journaling. Like I've said, if you have strict or nosy parents, family members, or roommates, a password-protected journal might be better in this situation if you fear the people near you more than big companies or hackers getting into your journal entries. And for stuff like planning, if you're only planning for one day and then after that those plans are basically useless, if you don't care about archiving your planner, having a digital format you can easily delete without wasting any paper can be a good thing, since it helps save the environment as well. Since you don't care about preserving it, it's much easier getting rid of a digital file than it is an actual notebook. Since you have to rip the pages and stuff on a digital file, press Shift-Delete and it's gone. So that's an advantage of digital journaling. Well, in this case, planning, not journaling. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video or learned something useful from it. And let me know what kind of journaling you do and which format you chose to do it. And tell me why you chose that particular format in the comments below. See you next video!